Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022. Tonight is season 3, episode 9. And my guest tonight is Ryan Pyette. He's a journalist, writer with the London Free Press in London, Ontario. And he's also covers the London Knights and the Ontario Hockey League as well. And I believe Ryan's been with the London Free Press for over 20 years now. So he was nice enough to give us some time tonight to talk about his career and working for the London Free Press and talk maybe a little bit about the London Knights, who are having another outstanding year this year. So if you guys can just bear with me, and I will bring on Ryan and we'll talk a little bit of OHL and some of his career as well. Good evening, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
There. Yes. Have you used StreamYard yet on any of your video conferences?
No, it's brand new. I've used a lot of them in the last 2 years, but not StreamYard. It looks good. I'd say superior to Zoom at this point. And I like the background, Bud Gardens there in the back. And, I always got to say, I remember in Guelph there when I saw you wearing a Tigers hat. And that's the team I grew up rooting for. So we could talk about that all night if you want.
Yeah, huge Tigers fan. Yeah, no, StreamYard is great. My friend in Philadelphia who helped me get started with podcasts told me about StreamYard, and it is such a great. It's Zoom is great too, but StreamYard for my podcast is really great. And every guest I have on, I try to put on a background that represents the city they're from.
Yeah, it looks like my view in the press box. That's it right there. It's the same thing.
Definitely, yeah, and it was kind of like you said. It was kind of nice to meet you briefly at the Sleeman Center, and I really enjoyed doing the camera work, the broadcast side of it as well on TV as well.
Yeah, and you know what? You landed in Guelph there with the Storm. Everyone talks about the London Knights being a great OHL franchise. The Guelph Storm is no slouch either. The success that franchise has had. You're in a good spot, and they had a great start to the year, and we'll see what happens. But they're taking some lumps now. But they got so many good young guys. I think they're going to be a force for years to come here in this league.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what I was going to say, Ryan. I do think the 1 month break kind of hurt their momentum because they did have a nice win against London before the Christmas shutdown, and then they didn't play a game for another month. I'm not making excuses there, but I just think a month shutdown, and then also, like you said, they're a very young hockey club, and it is a long season too.
Yeah. It goes up a level. You see that with the Leafs, right? The way they play. Every teams start playing playoff hockey, and for the young guys, it's real hard too. And I know the Knights have a lot of 17-year-olds that they depend on in key situations, and they're expecting now that they've had half a season to start playing a little heavier and a little more like veterans, which is it's a tall ask when they didn't get seasons as 16-year-olds. You think of these draft eligible guys, and they missed the whole year last year of the learning that they're going through, and it's just the rate. Going to the new rinks, going to Saginaw, going to the Sioux. For Guelph, it was that first time in London. Same with the Knights, going to Kitchener for the first time. The kids had never played there before. So, it takes a little while, and you get the nooks and crannies and bumps and the boards and glass and that sort of thing. It does take a bit that you usually get in your 16-year-old year. So I give the credit to these guys for playing the way they have this year in their first years. And for the veterans, for the most part around the league, and obviously I'm mostly doing the Western Conference this year. The veterans, they really, really are helping these young guys along, and they know what it meant to miss a year, and they want these guys, they want to win, right? So it's been very competitive hockey so far, and I've been really impressed. There's been some, like Guelph's been beating London a lot, and London beats Kitchener and Owen Sound a lot, and there's all kinds of stuff like that across the league, but it's been really entertaining hockey. I found the skill level hasn't dropped off forever. Just some of the system stuff, right? There's some defensive breakdowns and all that, and I chalk that up to a year in. Plus, like you said, these not having a game for a month for Guelph and all that. It's crazy. And London had a ton to make up too. They still have a ton to make up. They'll be playing. They played 13 in February, and we just counted up 15 in March, 31 days in March. There's not going to be a lot of time to practice the rest of the year, too. So they're just going to have to rely on their smarts and experience here the rest of the way.
And I was going to say with Major League Baseball, I don't think they're going to be starting up until at least July, in my opinion. Thankfully, we have the OHL and junior hockey going until at least June this year with the Memorial Cup.
Yeah. I'll be interesting when the OHL's finals in June. I'll be interested to see how many people are in the two rinks that are playing, the two teams, how many people they have in their rinks, because I know most people have cottages, right? And you got a brief time to use it, and we'll see what happens there with the season ticket holders and stuff like that across the league.
Yeah. One thing I was going to notice, like in the West, you obviously got London, Windsor, Flint, and Sioux. Guelph's kind of now on the edge of being in the top four, but in the Eastern Conference, it's really strong for once.
Yes, yeah. So like you said, 20 years at the London Free Press, and so it's been dominated by the West. Like I would say, without looking it up, it's like five champions have come out of the East and probably 15 out of the West, right? And you look at this Midwest division, they've all won. I want to go back to when Kitchener won it in 2008. Every team in the Midwest division has won it, or been there, knocked on the door a couple of times. And London's obviously won 3 of them, in the last 13 years, and Guelph's won a couple. There's a lot of champions just coming out of the Midwest, probably 7 or 8 championships in the last 13, 14 years. So, I remember Oshawa. I went to the Memorial Cup in Quebec City when Oshawa won in 15. And then a few years later, Robbie Thomas got traded to Hamilton and became the MVP and when they beat the Sioux. And, it's good to see, like, this Hamilton team's real good. And, there's a couple others, right? North Bay's been solid all year, got some a nice core of players. And, I think it's been really competitive over there, which is great. I miss that, you get to see all those teams. Like, I don't get to see, you don't get to see Shane Wright in Guelph. I don't get to see him in Guelph and that sort of thing. And I'd like to see some of the guys on Hamilton, Mason McTavish, when he's, settled now from the Olympics and stuff. I like going to some of those rinks too. So, I miss that. It's been a weird year. And honestly, Chris, I've really started to think about it. Like when you look at the scoring races and stuff like that. And I hope the OHL is considering it. I haven't talked to them yet about it, but they should have like co-MVPs. Like there should be it's too hard to pick a league MVP or a league scoring champion when you don't play each other. So they should probably just hand out the awards. They should do one for the East and the West this year at the end of the year.
Definitely, and it's going to even make the OHL championship more interesting this year because nobody's going to have played each other. So it's going to be very interesting how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I having covered a lot of OHL championships over the year, those big games like during the season, like the kids know pretty around, right after the trade deadline, they know who's going to win. Mostly, there's hardly any huge upsets in the OHL. I can think of, the Sudbury Wolves in 2007 making a run to the finals. There hasn't been too many of that. North Bay, when they lost to Guelph in 2014, went on a big run. But, mostly the top teams, the teams that were active at the trade deadline, they're the ones that get there and win. And so, that during what I was trying to say was during the season, those big games in February where I remember Niagara would come into London to play when they had Hosang and the big guys there. They play the Knights, and you could feel it in the building. It was a little more, even though it was only 1 or 2 meetings a year, it was a big time deal. And I know places like Peterborough and St. Catharines, Niagara, and Barrie, they probably miss having the Knights and Storm and getting a look at the Kitchener Rangers and that, because if you're of a certain vintage, those are the teams you grew up hating and watching. You'd love to see them again. Kind of like for my baseball analogy. I grew up and I watched the Tigers beat the Blue Jays in the '87. For the '87 division series, yeah, and they played a bunch of times down the stretch. That was some of my favorite ball I ever watched growing up. And now it's not barely a rivalry. They play a few times. What is it, 6 or 7 times a year? And it's basically it doesn't mean anything. But to old timey fans like us, it's it really meant something. And I miss that. I wish they were in the same division.
Major League Baseball kind of killed that rivalry, like you said, and then I told Jerry Howarth this. even if the Jays had beaten the Tigers in '87, which they obviously didn't, I think the Twins would have beat them anyways because I think the Jays and Tigers beat the hell out of each other. And obviously the Tigers won the pennant or the Eastern Division. They didn't have anything left in the gas tank against the Twins.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. And you know what? There was a poll, might have been Rex Chapman, one of the guys I follow on Twitter there, was retweeting who is the worst, who is the worst, like champion you've ever seen or something like that. And there was all these, there was thousands of things. I was just scrolling through it, sports champion, and the 87 Twins came up, and, for Tiger fans, the 2006 St. Louis Cardinals came up too. So it was kind of like, and I remember when the Red Sox beat the Tigers with Big Papi at the home run, big grand slam there that Torrey Hunter almost caught. That was one that got away too on the Tigers, right? You look back and I think the Leaf fans, they think. Last year when they had Montreal on the ropes there and they couldn't finish the job, like, oh man, we might have went to the finals or played for the Stanley Cup. And I think, and one thing I know, Knights fans, you go back to 2019 when they were playing they had Nick Suzuki and Isaac Ratcliffe and obviously George Burnett was the coach, and Guelph had a real good team, and the Knights were up 3-0, and that was one of the most amazing things I've seen was Guelph coming back and winning that series. And then that gave them, I think, beating the Knights in that 7-game series when they fell to Saginaw and Ottawa early in those series. I think they already knew they're a veteran crew anyway, but they knew they could come back from that. And that's one that I know Knights fans are like, man, we could have been in Halifax at the Memorial Cup had we won one more game, find a way to win one more game. It's just, to me, that's one of the interesting things in sports is just like following trades, like what happened to guys after trades, following what happened after that game 7 in round 1 or 2 and what could have been kind of thing. That's I always love that kind of stuff.
Well, in that series, I went to game 4 in Guelph, and the Storm hung on to win that game, and that just turned it around, winning 4-3, build their confidence. And I was just like, hey, let's just win one game and take it to the next game, and then that's it. And like I said, they did a great job. That 19 team didn't win the Memorial Cup, but you know what? It's still a very special team and still one of the best junior teams I've been around.
Yeah, they're amazingly resilient. I call it the most resilient team there's ever been in the OHL because, to go down in all those series. And remember, I ripped them a little bit that trade deadline because they just it looked like they were just putting a team together on the fly. Obviously I have a ton of respect for George Burnett, and he, what a job he did there that year to put all those guys together, all those new faces, to bringing guys in, and then they gelled. And maybe it took, going down 3-0 to the Knights for them to gel, but they did it.
Yeah, they did it. To me, the 14 Storm was probably the most, they didn't have the most talent, but that team really should have won the Memorial Cup in 14. But unfortunately, they had one bad game that whole year, and that was in the final against the Edmonton Oil Kings, of course, at Budweiser Gardens. So it just shows you, Ryan, how hard it is, not just to win a league championship, but to win the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, and Chris, you got to celebrate your OHL championship. I think a lot of people set the bar of we got to win the Memorial Cup, but you got to celebrate that. And I know Guelph did, that year, and even the 19 team, they celebrated it. I remember some of the Knights team. Remember that was the 3rd year in a row for the Knights at the Memorial Cup, and I had a front row seat to that Guelph team playing Edmonton. And I agree with you. The Guelph was like the best team in the country that year. The wait, right? Like you finish on Tuesday or Wednesday and you're done until Sunday or whatever. The other teams are playing. That's real tough. And I go back the 06 Tigers. Remember, they won and they had to wait for the Dash League to finish, play 7 games, and then they couldn't field the ball anymore by the time. And the hitters are cold, right? It's everyday sport kind of thing. So that the Memorial Cup is a tough situation there when you actually win it and get in it. I saw that in 2012 in Shawinigan when the Knights got in on a Tuesday, and then they had to fill their days for like 4 days before they got to play again. It's like you're in a totally different tournament. But the Knights went to 3 in a row there, and they got further away each time before 2 years later winning it in Red Deer with Mitch one of the great junior lines I've seen with Marner, Kachuk, and Dvorak, an amazing line to cover and follow all year. But yeah, lucky Guelph made it to the 14 final because they went. London fans didn't want to go to the final as much when their team got knocked out. London fans are London fans, right? They're like the Knights, and Guelph came en masse to kind of save the atmosphere at that one. That was a tough loss to Edmonton, and Edmonton was a resilient team. They played all those marathon games, and I know they had a tough run, and they had a key player, Latvian, die on their team. I remember they had their jersey, brought his jersey out when they won. It was, you can never underestimate, as a writer, I respect this. You can never underestimate the underlying things that bring a team together, right? That that you don't see on the ice. If fans focus on what's going on the ice, and sometimes you got to look a little deeper and see what's going on with that team and what brings them together or what tears them apart.
Definitely. And I was going to say, I've been lucky too with getting guys from around the OHL to come on, and Mike Stubbs has been on twice, and Jim Van Horn, Greg Sloan. And I even said to one guy, I might have to secretly cheer for the Knights, because when you meet people from other franchises or organizations, it's kind of hard to cheer against them when they're good people, like Manny and Steve from the Windsor Spitfires as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's I know we can get into this, but I know people think of the Knights as the evil empire or whatever. The ones that what the London Knights do is they've got an experienced coach, right, who played in the NHL. They got a GM who's one of the best talent evaluators at this age group, 14, 15, 16, in Mark Hunter. And these guys, surround themselves with all kinds of player development opportunities. Like they have, I remember in the early days, they have trouble, they weren't scoring. So they paid to bring in a shooter tutor, kind of a guy that was an expert on shooting to try to work on their shooting. And they'll go the extra mile for their kids, and the kids appreciate that. Right now it's watching the video, right? How many clips can the kids want to learn by watching video, right? Okay, so do we have an iPad on the bench? What are we learning? How much video are we watching during the day? How many games are we watching? They create that atmosphere. Also, they're tremendous recruiters. And I think the best recruiting in junior hockey that I've learned over the years is if you have special players, like Guelph should be able to recruit very well now because you got Nick Suzuki. So you come in and you point, you bring a kid and you say, Nick Suzuki played here. You watch him play for Montreal. He's one of Montreal's best players. That goes so far in recruiting. So you got to take advantage of that. I know when the Knights were looking for, the Knights are known for, they get all the American players. Well, why do they get the American players? Because Patrick Kane was here, right? They got Patrick Kane to come here. And then every American player that watched Patrick Kane on TV, where did he play? London Knights. They keep mentioning it. And they bring him in and they're like, and they get Patrick Kane to call the kid and say, you know what, you'd like to, I had a great time here. You'd like to play in London too. So they recruit like a NCAA kind of like they brought that collegiate kind of recruiting style that you see in football, like University of Michigan and all the SEC schools and all that. They bring that style of recruiting here. And, you either keep up for the other teams, all the other teams in the league, you keep up or you get left behind. And that's why the Knights are good. Obviously, they got the big rink and they draw a lot of revenue from that. But, some of the things you hear about the team that, fans will say, wow, they got the pick of anybody they want. Well, they work at it. So I got a lot of respect for them for that. They work at it. And then people say they got the referees in the pocket. I hear that all the time. They got the referees in the pocket. And I actually wrote a story early in the year showing how, they had way more penalties than penalty kills than power plays. And everybody went bananas, right? And because they think because the Knights do well off the ice that they should be punished for it on the ice, right? With special treatment. So it's interesting to see. But I love the rivalries. It's I love going to see Owen Sound once in a while, and it's hard to drive up there in the wintertime, but it's a great atmosphere up there. Kitchener's obviously second to none. I love like I said before, the Guelph organization, and when they're going, they get their crowds are loud and proud, and it's a tremendous. I'd never want to be anywhere else but the OHL Western Conference because. You see a lot of great hockey here, and you see a lot of great players. I can name a million of them. You start with Connor McDavid, right?
Yep.
He was here. I got to watch him for 3 years and watch him not play like 3 or 4 times, like 20, 30 times, which is pretty special.
Definitely. Hey, one thing also too that helps with stability with the organization. Like with the Knights, you think of Dill and Mark Hunter. The Storm right now seem to have the stability with George Burnett. That kind of helps too with recruiting.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like if you want to play for George Burnett, he's like third or fourth all time in OHL coaching wins. He's done it for 30 years. I remember growing up watching George Burnett as a young man coaching, Niagara Falls and all these great players on that team. So, I mean, the guy's been all over the league a million times, and he knows how to run an organization. And yeah, that's the thing. You bring in young guys, and you want to have a mentor for them, right? Because it's either learn crash and burn by trial by error, and then get your lumps that way, or learn from a respected person and have it be passed down. I know with the Knights that's happening. Like Dale, obviously it's going to stay in the family for many generations to come of the team. But you see Dylan Hunter and Rick Steadman on the bench. Rick Steadman obviously went to Guelph when one of the most interesting trades I ever saw was. He was traded in the Memorial Cup year, right? Like London had the Memorial Cup in 05, and they traded their own nephew. The Hunters traded their own nephew to Guelph, to help them. They ended up getting Dan Girardi and Adam Dennis, right? That year, which basically they needed to cement things. But at one point Dale's going to get too old to ride the bus to Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury and all that, and he's gonna get sick and tired of it. It's not gonna happen anytime soon, I don't think. But maybe when he's 70 years old or something, like Brian Kilray, and he'll pass it on to Dylan and Rick to run the team, and he expects them to work just as hard as him and Mark have over the last 20 years. So, one interesting story is I kind of covered the team. Jim Cressman, the great London Free Press sports reporter, covered the team, the Knights, many, many years, decades. And obviously I'm in my second decade now covering the team. But at the time, early on when the Hunters bought the team, Lindsay Hofford was the head coach, and they were going to fire him. And so they made him the assistant coach. And so I remember I was at practice, and I said, to Dale, who's the new coach? And he said, you're looking at him. That's all he said. And so he took over and then never missed a beat. And, he reels off 45 to 50 wins every year. And he always has a competitive team. And like you say, that consistency, the kids know what to expect, and they can't, you don't get in a battle, the agents, the parents. Why get in a battle with the London Knights if your kid's not playing enough or whatever? Because you don't have much of an argument, because these guys have done it, and look at the players they've churned out, right?
So. Definitely, and they've really turned around the franchise when they took it over in 2001.
Yeah. Like you think 5 years ago, the London Knights were 5 years before that, the London Knights had the worst record in the history of junior hockey, right? 360-3. It was a terrible team, and they had hardly any NHL prospects. And now it seems like I think it was last year that they passed Peterborough for the most NHL draft picks cumulatively in history. So, you know what, Chris? It's been fun. You watch these kids go and play, and then you watch them. I like to watch the NHL too when I get a few minutes, and look who I get to see. Right, the guys I covered for the most part. I watch the Leafs. Not just because they're in Toronto and that's all you get on free TV, right? But I like to watch Mitch Marner, and I like to watch John Tavares, and it's that sort of thing, right? You have guys that you watch them grow up, and you want to see them do well, right? And there's it's the same thing, as a Londoner, like seeing Nick Suzuki. It's a former junior Knight. That's a lot of, or Nazem Kadri. What a year he's having! Could win the scoring title this year if the Edmonton guys slow down, right? Like. That's a lot of pride there's hometown pride, and then there's pride in the local club too.
club. Yeah, yeah, and Isaac Ratcliffe is from London as well. So
Yeah, and he scored his first NHL goal, and
against the
he's
Red
up there
Wings.
hitting and getting
Yeah,
shots, and
yeah.
obviously Philly's not where they want to be, right? They made some, it's kind of a transitional thing, and I hope Isaac gets to be part of that transition and play and have a long NHL career.
Yeah, and even just doing the camera work for Rogers TV for the Gulf Storm games, I get to see behind the scenes with the players and that, and you start to get to know the players too as human beings. And like you just said, it's great when you see them get into the NHL. It's like, hey, I saw them when they were here, and see how much they've developed.
Oh yeah, like absolutely, and yeah, it's for the behind the scenes stuff. It's the maturity. You see kids come in at 16, and some of them are like deer in headlights kind of thing. And by the time
That's
they're
right.
18, they got it figured out. 18, 19, they're ready to move on to the next level, and it's awesome seeing them make an impact on the game at that high level. And it's there's a million examples, right? But you see the kids there. You see what they have to work on, right? Like I remember Luke Evangelista coming in at 16. He was like a skinny little guy and barely played, and frustrated he wasn't playing. He only played about 30 games that first year and never scored. And look at him now, like and one
Yeah.
of the nicest kids. I always say this. There's kids you kind of get to know a little more, and obviously he's one of those guys. Like what an example for. He's a Nashville pick, and he looks like he's going to be an NHL player, and he's obviously doing great things in the league this year. And to think about where he came from, I remember Mitch Marner at before his big year. He I remember him going home in tears with his. He had a terrible game, and he didn't think he was doing very well. A bit of a slump at the start of one of his last years, and he went home and said, "I don't know if I can do this anymore." And then he took the weekend off and obviously came back with a different attitude and hasn't really stopped scoring since. So kudos to these guys, and obviously the teams for the support they show them. There's obviously examples over the years where players were mishandled or mistreated or misunderstood. But like I would say those are mostly in the minority. They're small, kind of the things in the media that we jump on are the exceptions to the rule and that sort of thing, right? That's what we got. I think in the OHL, they do a pretty good job of treating out good young men.
Well, and I was going to say I'm a Red Wings fan, and I'm so happy with the Storm City line, and some of them in Detroit act surprised, and I'm like, um, I have to admit, Tyler Bertuzzi when he came to Guelph, I was like, you know what, he's only in the league because of his last name, but you know what, that young guy worked his ass off and made himself into a star player.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he was a pain in the butt. He always got around. He knew how to play the game. Obviously,
Yep,
some of that is from the family lineage, but he had to make his own way himself. And
yep.
yeah, that line's great. And I see good things for the Red Wings in the future here. I obviously haven't gone
There's the
to the.
Senators.
Yeah. I haven't gone to Little Caesars Arena, but I can't wait to go at some
It's
point here.
nice.
I used to go to Joe Louis all the time, so all kinds of things. But I hear it's a ridiculous place to be. So it'd be
Yes,
nice to see that happen.
I was able to go before the pandemic, and they did beat the Leafs 3-2 in overtime. So it's a really nice arena. I just don't know if I'd want to sit up in the high level because it's quite steep.
Oh yeah. There's a few. The old style buildings were like that, right? They're trying to
Yes. Yeah.
maximize people's view, right? I hate. I like going in the press boxes in the OHL for the most part. Like Guelph and London are good examples. I can actually hear, some of the stuff on the ice. I like being a lot lower in the NHL. I've covered NHL games, and it is like that. It's like you're in the ceiling, right? And you're looking straight down. You can see all the plays develop, but it might as well be on Mars, right? The games, you don't get the blood, sweat, and tears, which is why I got in this business, right? To understand more. Anybody can watch it on TV, but to kind of understand what the guys go through, and on a daily basis, and follow a team on a daily basis. That's the best part. And I got that early. I grew up in the Sioux, Chris, Sault Ste. Marie. And
That's where I was born, Sault Ste.
one
Marie.
of my best friends and I, Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you know what it's like. And look, we both moved away, right? So, but it's a great city, and so in 1985, I would have been about 9 years old, and they had an amazing team. They had Bob Probert and a bunch of guys, and
Terry Chris
Jeff
was the head coach in the
Terry
80s.
Crisp, yeah, you know
Yeah.
it. So they went 33-0 at home, and I went to a lot of the games. Like I want to say I went to 20 plus of the games, and you had an ice cream bar and watched one of the best teams in junior hockey every night. And obviously I had gone before when I was even littler, but that around 9-10 years old, that's a good for junior hockey. That's if you can get kids in there, and that's I think we missed that the last 2 years, right? Those 9 and 10 year olds that dad or mom would bring them to grandpa, bring them to a game.
Yeah.
And they start to, I know you look at the names on the jerseys and then you start to figure out about them and then you collect their hockey cards and
Yeah.
that's how you create fans, right? So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of this after these last 2 years because, I know now with vaccinations and stuff, I was looking, it's a lot of older people in London right now. It's all season ticket holders at the moment. So, hopefully there's some of these teams that have long playoff runs or they'll get some kids in the building because that's where the passion for the game starts. And it'd be terrible to lose that passion for junior hockey in these cities that don't have NHL teams.
Yeah, and I started with the OHL I'm old, back in 81 and 82 when the Guelph Platers were an expansion franchise. And to me, the 81-82 Platers were still the worst. I know they won 7 games, but to me, that was the worst junior A team I've ever seen in my life. But you know what? Guelph was just so happy to have a junior A team back. And as a 9-10-year-old kid at the time, I was like, oh, Al McInnes, Scott Stevens, Brian Bellows. So I've really been connected with the OHL for 40 years and been really lucky for the most part, to have junior hockey in Guelph most of my life since I've been in
Yeah,
Guelph.
yeah, and you know what? Those player team that was bad, but you probably remember all the guys on the team almost. And
Yeah, yep.
and look, 5-6 years later, they were the Memorial Cup
Okay.
winners, right? With Jacques Martin, and
And Gary
doesn't take long.
Roberts.
Yeah,
Gary
Yeah.
Roberts.
Gary Roberts. I have a lot of respect for Gary Roberts, and I remember the one Leaf. I mean, it was one of the last times the Leafs were out of the first round, right? Like he was a force, right? So what a great career, and now he's training the next generation, right? So I love that too. I mean, it's a real thrill for me to not only cover the league, but I remember one of the last times I went to Guelph before the pandemic. I go downstairs to do the pregame interviews with the with the Knights, and there's sitting there on the table. There's Bobby Orr, right? Because he represents somebody on the team and all that. And it's you never know who you're going to see at the rink in junior hockey. And I would say there's a lot of movers and shakers that come to how many GMs and big presidents. And I remember sitting up in a press box with the Oilers brass one time in St. Catharines. They were watching who they're going to pick next in the draft for their first round pick, and the whole crew was there. And you see so many people involved in the game. I seen Ken Holland obviously a million times too in the rinks. So it's not much different. The NHL teams aren't run. They're just to scale, right? A bigger scale, but they're not much different than OHL team. And hey, the scouts and the GMs got to get out there and watch the next generation of players.
Yeah, definitely. As a young kid, when it was the old Guelph Platers, Bobby Clark I met as a kid in the stands, George Armstrong, Terry Crisp, and then just recently in Guelph, Chris Pronger and Chris Draper from the Red Wings. And these guys were nice enough to talk to me for 10, 15 minutes and let me get a picture with them. And it's just, yeah, I'm like a kid when I go back into a rink.
Yeah, no, there's no better place, right? Like, and if I could spend my whole career here doing this, it'd be, I'd look back at it as pretty. I grew up in a rink, I played hockey and all that, and I enjoy still being there, and it's a great place to be. But you never know. You know that I learned from the pandemic that when you step in a rink, don't take it for granted because it might be the last time for a long time, right? So I really missed it last year. Usually February, March, you're like, oh my God, there's season's so long. Can we just get on to the playoffs now, kind of thing, and get to the end of March? But I'll never complain about that this year because it's been a long time, and it's I know the kids even they're not going to complain about it playing every second day because they missed a full year last year, right?
Yeah, and I missed over a year and a half of doing camera work, volunteering with Rogers TV, and I'm just trying to catch up. And now every game we're there, the crew, we have a good crew in golf, and it's just nice to be around people again, around the players, and around fans when there's fans in the arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's you're 100% right. I I miss the fans. It was so weird covering the games with nobody in the building and just there's
It's
a
not the
goal and you're
same.
used to when you see that goal for when there's about to be a goal, you're like, okay, people stand up and then they start cheering and there was nothing, just the referee pointing to the pointing that to signal a goal, and it was brutal. So I'm glad we're kind of getting through that, and hopefully move past it and everything's clear sailing. But you read the news reports and you never know, right? So I guess we should just enjoy it while we can.
Okay. Are you okay for a few more minutes? I just wanted to get
Yeah,
a few
sure. Go
questions.
ahead, Chris. Whatever
Okay.
else you want to talk about.
Okay, no problem. I was going to ask you, how did you end up with the London Free Press, and what has it been like working in the London market and covering the Knights all these years and the Ontario Hockey League?
Yeah, so when I always wanted to be a sports a newspaper reporter, and I wanted to cover sports. That was a long time goal of mine since high school. So I went to school. I went to University of Waterloo, and I studied English and professional writing. And then I got a job out in Calgary at the Calgary Sun, and I got to when I was just like 21, and I got to immerse myself in all kinds of sports out there. And then I went to Winnipeg and became a sports columnist about 22 years ago, 23 years ago. And I worked in Winnipeg for almost 2 years. And then, I was married, and we moved back to Ontario, and I was looking for jobs, and I was lucky to get one in London. I had a few connections there, and I got one in London. And so I pretty much did this. And then I wasn't on the Knights beat to start. Like I said, Jim Cressman, the great hockey writer, was there. I did other stuff. I did all kinds of other sports, just like at my other previous stops, and loved it, and still do. Like, one thing you got to know, Chris, in the newspaper business, it's really changed. When I started, there was probably 6, 7 people in just the sports department, and now I'm the sports department. I'm the only person left, so I got to wait. As much as I enjoy covering junior hockey and the Knights, I have to. I also have to spend other time doing other stuff as well. Covering basketball games and auto racing and baseball and all that stuff, which I thoroughly enjoy too. But the Knights and London's a good sports town. Yeah, they just won the Intercounty Baseball Championship. I was out in Quebec City for the Vanier Cup. Western Mustangs won the Vanier Cup. They had another great year. Greg Marshall, fantastic coach. I loved covering the football team for many years. And then when I got the Knights, I had to kind of give that up. Otherwise, I would have not seen my family on the weekends, right? I'd be gone all weekend. So I gave that up, and it was nice to cover it this year. I don't know if I could do it long term anymore, but I got a chance to do it, and it was fantastic. The Knights, to me, it's one of the great markets in junior hockey. You see, like how many franchises get 8,000-9,000 people every game consistently over and over and over for year after year after year. And people, and it's the brand of the London Knights has become winning. That's what they're synonymous with, and that's what the fans expect. And when they don't see winning, they get restless. It's not like like rebuilding teams or the Leafs where they make excuses for Jack Campbell had a bad night, but we love him, kind of thing. It's like no, you win, or I think one of the great examples of that was when Patrick Maroon was the Knight. He was obviously a phenomenal player, and he led the Knights in scoring in his 1 year, but the team lost in the first round in 5 games to Guelph, and Drew Doughty, hometown kid, killed them in that series. And so everyone's like, but obviously everybody appreciates Patrick Maroon now. That either like, at the time it was like, you can't get him out of the first round. What kind of leadership and all that. But as time went on, you see how much character he had, and he's won 3 Stanley Cups in a row, so and could get a 4th, right, with Corey Perry there, and what a great team Tampa has. So it's worked out just fine for Patrick Maroon, but he learned a lot in London and learned how to lead a team while he was there. And those lessons are invaluable, especially now that he's of a vintage. He's 33, 34, and like we talked about earlier, the number of players that I enjoy watching. Matt Tkachuk play, and Dvorak, Josh Anderson. So proud of him. What a great story. Signed as a free agent with the Knights. Wasn't even drafted. The OHL was way too small. Consider he's only 120, 130 pounds. The last guy you think would become like a power forward, a high-paid power forward in the NHL, but there he was, great last year in the playoffs, early part of the playoffs, and there he was beating the Leafs again the other night. Guys like that, right? You really root for them. The number 1 picks are the number 1 picks, the first rounders. You expect them to get a chance, but it's always those unsung heroes that pop up that you love to cover, and those guys are usually the best stories. And goalies too. I love covering goalies. We've got a great goalie. Owen Bennett to me is an interesting story because he keeps beating the Knights, and you keep looking at his numbers, and you're like, wow, he's way below 900 save percentage. What's going on there? But obviously a good goalie. And Brett Brochu. Yes. Nobody in the NHL looks at him, but he keeps reeling off wins. While on the World Junior team, gets to play. I've seen a few examples of that over the years. I think of Michael Hauser. He was one of my favorite kids. I remember driving down to Pittsburgh in one of the summers and spending some time with him at the Pirates game. I got tickets, and we went. I went with him and his brother, and we went to the Pirates game. And I wrote a story just talking about what it was like growing up in Pittsburgh and how different it is from London. And I'll never forget that. It was 10 years ago, and I'll never forget that. And it was, great to see him. Like when the Sabres did use him, he usually won or did something good, right? In his time. So, it's been it's been great. I guess it would be kind of like teaching high school a bit. Like I'm not teaching the kids anything except maybe how to do an interview or how to answer questions, but kind of like teaching high school, and a teacher sees the guys, oh, you're a lawyer, or a doctor, or a scientist, or working at the steel plant, or coaching a hockey team, or something like that. Like that's kind of the feeling I get when the guys come back, right? And you get to see them and ask them about what's going on, and kind of staying in the NHL loop, because the OHL and the NHL are connected. They're so very connected, and not only in the on ice, like the rules of the game and all that, but how the kids watch the NHL every night, and then they try to mimic with the good things they saw, right, and try to avoid the bad things they saw.
Definitely, and I really hope Michael Hauser gets a legitimate chance, because I like seeing stories like that. Not just because he played for London, it's because I like seeing underdogs and people work their butts and make it. Even in what I'm trying to do with radio, trying to get into this industry at a later age in life as well. The underdog stories, I love those.
Yeah, that's it. You're an underdog story. That's and underdogs, they got to work hard, right? They nobody gets handed anything. And that's what it is like to play for the London Knights. You got to earn every shift. If you're a big draft pick, you'll get your shot. But if you're not performing, man, you're going to sit in the stands, or you're going to sit on the bench and watch the older guys or the guys that are performing play, right? And you see, I'm sure in Guelph and all that, they're like, oh my God, look at Evangelista. He's on the ice 25, 30 minutes a game. But you got to go back to when he was 16 and didn't play at all. He earned that right to play these minutes, right? And be out there for 2 minutes on the power play and all that. At first, I used to be like, that's too long and all that. But, I think it is at the NHL level to spend 2 minutes on a power play. But at the OHL level, the guys are in pretty good shape. And they got their whole career ahead of them. So they don't mind ripping off a few long shifts here and there, right?
Definitely. Are you okay for 2 more questions, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. I could probably talk to you for 2-3 hours, not just about the OHL, but other sports too. This one I was just going to ask you: how has Logan Mailloux fit in with the Knights as a top tier defenseman so far?
Yeah, so everybody knows Logan Mayhew's the saga of Logan Mayhew. Some people don't even think he should be in the league this year. They should be, suspension should have been longer. He got half a year. He sat out half a year. He went through training. He had a psychologist and kind of a sports therapist, we'll say, and he did all that training. He sat out. He practiced. He went to the rink every day. He had to account for himself, and so he came back in the lineup. And obviously, I've got to see him more than a lot of people have seen him because I saw him play in the Junior B Nationals the year that they did have hockey, and before the pandemic, and then also in practice. And he's the best player on the nights. Like he makes he's a huge difference maker. He's the most talented guy. He's as strong as an ox. People ask me what he's like. I'd say on ice, he's like John Carlson of the Washington Capitals. I think he has that kind of upside that, as a controversial pick that as that what was, if you stripped all that away, I see why a team would want a player like that because they only come around so many times, every draft kind of thing, right? So I think he's fit in really well. Of course, he ran into he played a few games. He had 8 points in 6 games, and then he got hurt in a warm up. He was it's not even though people think on ice warm up. No, it was like when the kids they go out and they run around and they kick a soccer ball around, and if you've been in a rink
Yes.
before a game, they kind of they call it sewer ball or whatever, and he's running. They run around and just get themselves loose for the game. And he got hurt doing that. He hurt his leg, and so he's been out. And then when he did come back on January 1st, there was no games to play because it was at that time they were canceling them, and he had a couple weeks where he couldn't play. So he's played very limited. But I think once people see him play a lot more, they will probably share the assessment that. Yeah, he's one of the best defensemen in the OHL. And, I watched in Guelph, I watched a young guy like Cameron Allen. Obviously, I knew about him coming out of the U16 ranks, but, I think he's going to be a special player. Just watching what he's doing at 16. Logan Mayhew didn't really get to play. He played 3 or 4 games at age 16. So, I think Allen's one of those guys that could be one of these, money, what do you say, like Drew Doughty, like caliber 30-minute defenseman's kind of thing. And Logan Mayhew will show at the end of this year that if anything else, he's capable of playing 30 minutes. I haven't been allowed at this point that we're talking. I haven't been allowed to interview him, but I've talked to obviously everybody around him. Nobody's got to interview him, but so that's one thing. And obviously we're going to ask about his maturity level and stuff like that, and what the fall was like, that sort of thing when we do get that opportunity. So, it's been interesting, but yeah, talent wise, someone was telling me that in practice, if you want to know how hard a shot he has, that he took a shot and it actually broke one of the goalie's blockers in half. Wow. And they had to, he's a very powerful player. So, it'll be interesting to see. And then if he's back here again next year, playing for London, I think that's probably what will happen. And, probably the way the Knights have supported, like his personal development, I think that's probably a good idea rather than throwing him into an apartment somewhere in a pro city kind of thing. It'd probably be, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 6 months.
And that's another thing. Maybe next time if you come on, how important billet families are towards the development of these players too, off the ice as well, is just as important on the ice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, billets are everything. They're your parents. If you're away from home, they're your de facto parents, right? I billeted for being from the Sioux. I played junior hockey down south, and I billeted for 3 years, and it's an integral part of these kids' development, and billets don't get enough credit, obviously. for what they do. And one of my favorite stories the last couple of years is Saginaw and Winnipeg. Cole Perfetti, the forward. When he was in Oshawa, his family billeted a player, and the name escapes me, but it was an awesome player. I can't remember who it was now, but and he learned from that kid, and obviously now he's a fantastic player. So billet families have they don't have just the players. They give something back to the families as well. They if they have young kids there, right? They're a bit of a role model for them, and the kids get to see how hard the guys work and how much time they spend at the rink and hopefully at school. And that's important for any kid to see, to have an example like that in the teenage years.
And sometimes the fans, I used to as well, forget that these guys that are playing the OHL are still teenagers or young men, and they're still developing too, and their character in that. And it's like, and that's why the billet families are so important too off the ice as well.
Yeah, no, you can't stress that enough. And it's sometimes hard to get billets, especially in some of the smaller centers. And I know with COVID, it probably wasn't easy to get billets. This year, if people are concerned about high school age, college age kids coming into their home, but from what I heard, that hasn't been a massive problem in some of the centers. So, that's good, and because you need them, and they're very important parts of the organization, and because you can't just put them in a college dorm and call it a day and just have them come to the rink. You need them around families in that family atmosphere. It's a huge part of keeping those guys on the schedule and eating well too, right? Making sure
Nutrition.
they eat the way they're supposed to eat, because I can tell you, even a normal teenager that doesn't play sports that eats a lot of food as they're growing. So
Yes.
and learning. So yeah, these guys will eat you out of house and home.
Definitely, definitely. Just two quick questions I want to ask you, Ryan. I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's your pick right now, currently, to meet up in the 2022 OHL Championship, West versus East champions? And quick thoughts on the 3 stars, because lately on Twitter I've been reading people complaining about the 3 stars. I don't really worry about the 3 stars of a game anymore. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do the first. So quickly, I haven't seen anything better than Hamilton in the East. I'd be surprised if they get beat. And on the West, I'll go with Windsor, even though in the standings it doesn't look like it. But I think I've been really impressed with them. I'd like to see Flint a few more times to see if they're like for real. I know they have got the Flint and Sioux have a real good offense, but I want to see if they can keep the puck out of the net. And London's good too. They'll be very good defensively and hard to score on. I'm not sure they have enough scoring, but Windsor's got more scoring than they do. So we'll see what happens there. It should be a great playoffs. And yeah, the 3 stars, we have a lot of fun with that. In London, it's a bit notorious, and I want people to know I don't pick the stars in London. A lot of times that went to the media person in across the thing, and yeah, if some places like. They let the media people take it. In London, they pick it themselves because it's a promotion, and they do. Whoever the stars of the game are, they bring kids down and they have a stick, and for them to be assigned stick to give and pose for a picture, and that's important to them, and that's why you see them pick more London Knights than opposing players. But yeah, it's if to me, if it's close game, give one team 2 stars and the other the 1 star, if it's close game. If it's an 8-0 blowout, yeah, pick all 3 from. There's a few little rules, and I think Mike Farwell and Kitchener's covered that pretty well. I know he picks them in Kitchener, so that it's close to his heart. I don't care either. When I was growing up, I didn't stick around for the stars. I had somewhere else to go. So so we had to beat the traffic home or whatever. But I don't really care either, but I like to see 3 stars as a tradition, and I don't mind it. Player of the game in the international, that's fine. Player of the game, for each team or whatever, that's cool too. Whatever we want to do, but I remember growing up and 3 stars were like they actually kept like the point totals and that, and they'd be they'd have it in the league. I think Molson sponsored it, right? And it was
Yeah,
like,
Molson Cup 3 stars. Yes.
yeah.
Back
So
to,
I think it was a bit of a bigger deal, right? But
yes.
yeah, now it's like I don't know. Maybe they should let the kids pick find, as we talk about kid friendly in the rink, go get a couple 12-year-olds and let them pick the stars. Like I think do that on hometown hockey, right? So
That's actually a really great idea, Ryan, to get the young kids more involved in it. I think that's definitely an idea the league should look at.
yeah, or vote. You know what? Social media. I don't mind saying vote on the 3 star if you can do it. Technology, maybe do a Twitter poll with 10 minutes left and say who are the 3 stars of the game or something like that. You could, and then whoever, if it's not ridiculous and they're voting for like a guy that's -4 or something like that, then you can kind of do that too. But
Definitely.
yeah, that means that's the small little beans there. That's for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. One last question I wanted to ask you, because I've kept you probably more than 45 minutes. I just wanted to ask you any advice for those looking to pursue a career in journalism, and where can my audience again find you on social media?
Yeah, so I really I've kind of got my social media. I've gone down to my Twitter account, Ryan at LF Press. You can find me there. That's what I use the most. I have a Facebook page like everybody else and an Instagram, but I'm not a picture taker too much unless it's for my job. And so yeah, so find me on Twitter, and then yeah, for I got a ton of advice for people trying to make a career in journalism, but one thing that always served me well is to be available. If don't pass up an assignment, especially early in your career. Like if they say, hey, you got a chance to go to a softball game or something like that, between old timers or something. Well, you know what? Go to it. Don't complain. Go to it, and you might get a great story out of it. Right? Some of the best stories I've ever heard or written were at things that I didn't expect to go to. Right? And then you just keep building up your contact base and keep shaking hands and meeting people and being nice. Because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of distrust in the media right now, and people say fake news. Donald Trump kind of started that. It's kind of leaked
Hmm.
up here too. But most of the people that I've worked up in my career are trustworthy people. And they're just trying to tell a good story, and that's what drives everybody. And I know it's like that in radio. It's like that in TV. You want to entertain people. You want to inform them, and that you got to keep those at the. I don't think there's. I think the people that jump on a political slant or fight for this cause as their main way of getting into journalism. I don't. I think that's that's going to be a one-way street, and you're going to have a short career. If you're going to have a long career, make sure you're versatile and consume as much books and newspapers and obviously online as much as you can. As a sports fan, that's easy because we look for it, right? But make sure you're well versed and read the news, and that's the best. If you read in the paper or you're reading a bunch of sites every day, you'll get that versatility in your toolbox that when you're trying to start conversations, because it's asking questions like you asked me today. It's not easy. It's a real craft that you got developed over time. It's the tool of the trade. It's not easy to ask. Sometimes you ask bad questions, and don't be discouraged, because sometimes the best answers come out of terrible questions. So don't just learn from that experience. And if people yell at you, because you're gonna get yelled at, I get yelled at all the time. But you have thick skin and you put it behind you, and you keep going and you just enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy journalism, is one of those passion things. If you don't enjoy it, then that's when it's time to leave. If you wake up in the morning, you're like, I got to go to another hockey game, or I got to go run the camera at the Guelph Storm game, then you're not in it for the right reasons, and you should let somebody else who has that passion do it, right? So keep having the passion. And I know that's when I'm done. If I don't want to go watch the Knights or go watch a basketball game or a baseball game, then I'm out of there.
Definitely. And like I said, I'm just trying to get him. I'm just trying to improve every podcast show. And I've learned from my guests like Eric Smith and Jerry Howard too, to do your homework and make the conversations with your guests like we're talking at the arena, at the Sleeman or the Budweiser Gardens, and just try to make it more like that instead of when I first started this, Ryan, 2 years ago. It was all scripted, everything. And I've learned from a lot of the guests, and I'm just trying to improve every show.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it never hurts to have a scripted question or two to go, but don't be afraid to follow up if something pops in your head that you want to ask. That's what you do, and that makes great podcast, and that's what makes great storytelling, right? Is to maybe go off that beaten path a little bit and find something out interesting. That's what we all live for, right? So.
Definitely. And I was going to say, maybe if you do come back on again in the future, we can talk more about Major League Baseball and the Detroit Tigers and Lou Whitaker. Finally, hopefully, he'll get his number one retired in August when it should have been done 2 years ago. Poor Lou, man.
Yeah, him and Trammell should have went in together for sure. Like so many double plays. And hey, as I let you go here, I was in Erie for the 2015 OHL Championship, and if everybody's been to the Erie Insurance Arena, it's connected to the ball field where the Tigers farm team plays.
Seawolves.
Yeah, the Seawolves. And so I was there in 15, and I was just standing outside the rink because it was a nice day, because by then it's middle of May, right? And Lance Parrish and Alan Trammell walked by, and with their coaches, and so I had to take the opportunity and stop and talk to them, and I said to him, I said, but at the end of asking him a few questions and stuff, I said, have you ever gone to an Erie Otters game? And Trammy says, no, you know what? I've come here a bunch of times, and I've never gone in the building. And I said, go in the. I said, while you're here, get in there for one of these playoff games and watch this kid Connor McDavid, because I said you won't regret it. He'll be. I said he'll be in 3 or 4 years. He'll be like a Wayne Gretzky, Sidney Crosby type player in the NHL. And he laughed, and I hope he went. I never saw him because I was in the press box, and I hope Alan Trammell got to see Connor McDavid play hockey on my suggestion.
I'm just hoping one day I can get Alan Trammell or even Lou Whitaker on my podcast. That's one of my goals, is to get one of my idols to come on my show and talk about the curve and that. But we'll see. So I'm just gonna have to keep working at it. But that's one of my goals, is hopefully one day to be able to talk to Tram or Sweet Lou.
That'd be awesome. I'll watch that podcast over and over again if you get them on.
Okay, definitely. Ryan, I probably kept you over what I was supposed to, but I just wanted to say I really enjoyed speaking with you tonight, and I definitely would like to have you on as a guest again in the future.
Yeah, anytime, Chris. And I guess we'll see you at the Sleeman Center soon.
Definitely, I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, have a great night, Ryan, and we'll definitely keep in touch on social media.
Yeah, take care.
You too. Good night, Ryan.
Good night.
Good night. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Ryan Pyette. He's a journalist and writer for the London Free Press in London, Ontario, and he also covers the London Knights and the Ontario Hockey League as well. And speaking of the Ontario Hockey League, guys, you can check out their website, ontariohockeyleague.com, or you can check out the londonKnights.com as well. And speaking of those London Knights, they have 3 road games this week. Tonight at Owen Sound at 7 o'clock, and then they're off to Sault Ste. Marie for Friday night and Saturday night games at the GFL Memorial Gardens in Sault Ste. Marie. So that's going to be a tough weekend for a week for the Knights, with 3 road games against the Owen Sound Attack. Even though London's had their number, the Attack always play London tough as well. So that should be a good game tonight. And then Friday and Saturday against the Greyhounds as well. And also, guys, the Guelph Storm, they play 3-3 this weekend as well. Friday night at home against those Windsor Spitfires. And then Saturday night, they're at the Owen Sound Attack. And then Sunday afternoon, they take on the Kitchener Rangers at the Sleeman Center as well. And I'm looking forward to that. And before I go, guys, I'm just going to let you know, my next Live with CDP podcast is going to be tomorrow night, Thursday, February 24th at 8 o'clock Eastern. My guest is running back Johnny Augustine from the back-to-back CFL Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He's also a former Guelph Griffin football alumni, and he's also a real estate agent in the off-season. I'm looking forward to speaking to Johnny about how he went from the University of Guelph Griffins to an undrafted player in the CFL and making the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, he'll be on Live with CDP as well. And also, guys, Just going to let you know, I do this for all my shows. Live with CDP podcast. The audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And also, you can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. That's at Live with CDP on TikTok as well. And also, guys, if you're interested, you can follow Ryan Pyette on Twitter at Ryan underscore FL Press. If you want to follow him on Twitter as well, he covers, like I said, the London Knights, the Ontario Hockey League, and news stories around London, Ontario as well. And you can also check out the London Knights website, londonnights.com as well. Anyways, guys, I think I'm going to call it a podcast show. But again, I want to say thank you so much to Ryan Pyette for coming on today and talking some London Knights and Ontario Hockey League and his career with the London Free Press as well. And like I said, I hope everybody has a great night and can tune into Live with CDP tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Again, my guest is Johnny Augustine from the back-to-back CFL Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers and former Guelph Griffins alumni. So, all right, guys. Anyways, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for season 3, episode 10 of Live with CDP. And again, thanks to everyone watching live on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, Facebook and Twitter at Christy Pame, and also on my audio as well. All right, everyone. Again, thank you to Ryan Pyette for coming on, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with Johnny Augustine.